Great. So today we welcome Andi Jarvis onto the Manufacturing Leaders podcast. So typically I invite senior leaders from the industry and go for their journey. Today is a little bit different. So I start this podcast with the goal of adding value to the manufacturing and engineering world. Therefore, it'll be great to get Andi on to talk about the wonderful world of marketing and get some great tips on how we can all get started. So Andi, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And thank you for having me on, Mark. It's I feel like an honor that I'm part of your diversification strategy to move out of just leaders and into another area. So thanks for having me on, and it's a pleasure.
No problem at all. Look, I'm really excited about it because, well, I'm excitedly nervous. Normally I've got a bit of a plan. I thought this time round I've got some rough things, but we'll just have a chat round and I'll learn as well because it's definitely not my world. So if you don't mind give us a sort of brief introduction of who you are and what you do briefly, if that's okay, that'd be superb.
Yeah, so Andi Jarvis, as you said, I am, like yourself, a Yorkshireman who's been exiled or thrown out, I can't remember which. And I've been in marketing for over 20 years now. I lived in Wallsend for a little bit, so just up the road from you. Currently spend my time between Belfast and Liverpool. Worked at Durham County Cricket Club, Newcastle College, and then after that I moved into the agency world, where you start working with a lot of different products and services. And one of my early clients I remember working with made rubber floor tiles, right? And we had Expedia as a client.
Yep.
And we also had a rubber floor tiles company as a client. And what you realize then is that what might work for Expedia trying to sell holidays to New York doesn't quite work when you're trying to sell rubber floor tiles, right? So you
not
have
one
to
size
start...
fits all.
No, absolutely not, right? Nobody joins a queue around the block to buy rubber floor tiles, but they might do for a cheap holiday, right? Or they might do for a new iPhone. So you've got to try and do different things, or at least maybe think about it in different ways to be able to get your marketing to work for that sort of product. And what I found is the harder you had to work in those things, the more fun I had, right? So there's a lot of people in marketers and junior marketers, and I was one of them who, the more exciting the product, the more excited they get, right? Everyone who I do some lecturing at universities, and everyone you talk to wants to go and work for Nike, they want to go and work at TikTok or wherever, right? I've been there, I've done that. But as you start to get older and you do a bit more of this, you start to think, actually, being able to put your craft into a product that maybe isn't quite as sexy or as interesting as what everybody else has got. And then you're like, okay. And when you see it work, it's like, oh, it's the best feeling ever, right? So, I love this, right? I really, really do. I work with manufacturers now primarily who have a public product, a consumer product that they can sell direct and help them take it from a business to business organization where they're selling maybe through traditional trade shows and sales teams and take that direct to consumer. And that's kind of the bulk of the business now, but I still work with manufacturers directly on their B2B stuff and all sorts of other bits like that.
Yeah, great. And that's interesting, actually, because that's exactly what I was thinking, because maybe I'm being naive, but I've always thought of manufacturing as very different to other sectors. And in some cases, I won't do injustice, but quite archaic in terms of, it's potentially not as up to date as some other industries. Like you say, there's still trade shows, expos, press releases, that type of thing. Does that still work in manufacturing, or is it that's dead and we need to do new stuff?
No, listen, marketers are the worst people in the world for declaring things dead, right? And what they often mean when they say something's dead is it means they don't understand it. Yeah. Trade shows are dead, PR's dead, it's got to be digital this, it's digital that, it's nonsense, right? It's utter rubbish, right? But what tends to happen in manufacturing is that you end up with a lot of big order sales or high ticket sales, right? So even if you're making little widgets that don't cost much, tin cans, right, that you put drinks in, you don't sell them one at a time. You sell them by the 100,000 or the 10,000 or the million, right? Yeah. So the ticket tends to be quite big. Now, nobody buys that online on click and collect. You buy it through someone, through a tender, through a person. So any way you can get in front of that person works really, really well. Trade shows, networking events, press releases that people sit and read when they're sat in your reception, all those things work because they help to get the people in front of someone else. And what that's done in manufacturing often is skewed the view of marketing, as in it doesn't need to exist because we've got a sales team, so why do we need marketing teams? Or when you have marketing teams, they're not really a marketing team as a marketer would see it. They're a sales support team. They order the brochures, they book the trade show stand, they update the website. It's like, yeah, but that's a support service, right? It's not actually marketing. It's part of marketing, but it's not actually marketing. So then you end up with this vicious cycle of people who work with what isn't actually a marketing team, but is called a marketing team, don't think it works and see it as a cost center rather than a value add, and then move to another job and go, we don't need marketing. And this kind of cycle just perpetuates around manufacturing. But the companies who do it really, really well, they know marketing works, right? So to me, I think it's just bad marketing looks like bad marketing rather than marketing can't work in manufacturing.
Do you think the people that have done well have dedicated, is it all about the budget? Would you say, is it all about dedicating a big budget to this? We're serious about marketing, so let's put X, Y, and Z, because I think marketing is neglected a lot of the time. And I'll hold my hands up, it's something I've always been passionate about, but when it comes to it and I've gone, oof, that's expensive, we can utilize that money elsewhere. Do you know what I mean? So is that a common trait of most manufacturers?
Yeah, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you can do everything on the cheap in marketing, right? And it's not going to make a difference if you're not spending more than your competitors and things like that. The bigger the budget, the more impact you can have, the more, if you're going for an ad in a trade magazine, right, which still works in many manufacturing sectors, there's a world of difference between the cost and the impact of the back page, where you've got the full back page and everyone sees it, and being a third of a page or a quarter of a page on page 72 in black and white.
Yeah.
There's a big difference in impact, big difference in budget as well, right? So I'm not going to tell you that budget doesn't play a part. It does. But I think the biggest thing is getting your marketing team or someone from marketing involved in strategy at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because if you only ever use marketing as like a downstream function of just get them to be the administrators, all they'll ever be is just an expensive add-on to whatever you do, right? So if you get them involved and people who know what they're talking about at the beginning, working with your sales team, with your senior team, with operations and manufacturing, and go, right, well, who are we making this for? Because the biggest problem in most manufacturing firms I work with isn't the sales team thinking marketing's rubbish. It's often the manufacturing team turning out products that they love that no one's ever asked for.
Yeah.
Oh, look, we can make these things. And you're like, these are amazing, brilliant. Who's asked for them? Oh, well, Dave down on the end of the shed, he works out you could make them with this machine. You're like, wonderful. But who's asked for them? No, Dave makes them. And you're like, I get Dave makes them, but who wants them? And then your sales team have to sell them. People get kicked around. Your marketing team create a brochure and this happens and that happens. And you're like, there's no demand for this product. It might be wonderful, but there's no demand for it. And I think having marketing at the beginning, where marketing should be the voice of your customer in the organization. That's a simple way to think of marketing. Mm-hmm. It's not about digital. It's not about Facebook. It's not about advertising. It's about being the voice of your customer in your organization. What do they want? And then finding a way to take what you do to these people. That's the communications bit of marketing. So just find out what the people want, find out how you can help that, plug the two together. That's what a good marketing team should do. So that doesn't cost a huge amount. Mm-hmm. And after that, then you've got to work out what you can do with the budget to plug that gap. But don't start with how much can we spend first. Yeah. Start with what do the people want? What can we do to get them that? Work everything else out afterwards.
It's like I say, the big one is communication when you're at that stage. And if the goal for a marketing person, for a salesperson, I guess, is often potentially quite different to some extent if they're not talking to each other.
Yeah. I'd say there's a professor called Mark Ritson who I'm a big fan of. He used the phrase, I'm not even going to claim it as mine, but I love it. Sales and marketing have the same objective separated by time.
Yep.
And that's often the way, right? So marketing teams are trying to generate, in manufacturing organizations, generally trying not to generate sales, but qualified leads that go into your sales team. Make the sales team's job easier in one way or another, right? So marketers should be trying to help the organization sell stuff, because if it's not selling stuff, the money stops coming in. And if the money stops coming in, do you know what happens?
Yeah.
People start losing their job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're all trying to sell stuff. So marketers who go away marketing, we don't sell stuff. Can I swear on this podcast? Can I say they're full of shit?
Yeah.
Full of shit, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be trying to sell stuff, because if the organization's not selling, we're all out of work.
Yeah.
But the time frame for that is different. We're trying to do it over a slightly longer time frame, and then pass it on to the sales team to run the last lap or last laps to sort that out. It's better for everyone if the sales team are only talking to qualified leads. Mm-hmm. Their time's better spent, their bonus is bigger, and everyone's happier.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is dead simple. I mean, it's not, but it should be really simple. Marketing generates leads, sales close them, everyone high fives at the end of every month going, whoa, smash target, let's do it again. That's how it should work.
It's interesting because, like you say, they are potentially some of the first people to cut in a recession, or where companies not doing well, or like, okay, we've got to get rid of sales. Do you know what I mean? When it's almost it's reactive, not proactive. And it was only a few weeks ago I read an article, I love the government, saying that get advice to almost businesses to go through recession is potentially we could look at reducing things like marketing spend, which I found unbelievable, but that's the actual advice they were giving people.
I mean, if you're not listening, if you're not watching the podcast, sorry, you can't see me shaking my head so hard. I've got a sore neck now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, if ever you see some advice written, I'm a fan of government generally, and this, I'm not kind of the government should disappear and just let the world get on. They have a great role in stuff, but please God, not in marketing, right? The evidence from the last 100 years of recessions shows that advice is not just bad, it's criminally misguided. So there's a thing called in marketing, to bore you with it, it's called the law of double jeopardy, right? So in a recession, companies stop spending on marketing. You get hit once, the first jeopardy, because less people see your message, less people see your company, and therefore less people are likely to buy. But there's a second hit in a recession, is that all the media companies get hit in a recession. So they all cut the prices. So the companies who continue to spend, they don't have to change their spend to get masses more impact because the prices come down. So if you think about it, your activity starts to flatline and go down because you've stopped spending. And anyone who keeps spending gets more bang for the buck because there's less competition out there. There's less competition in the market. They get more. And you're like, well, why wouldn't you keep spending? Now, I understand when the money stops coming in, you've got to stop it going out somewhere. Otherwise, you end up going out of business. I fully get that. I'm not saying just keep spending and just keep hoping. You've got to get confidence that you're spending in the right areas, that you're spending on the right things, that it's generating leads and generating sales and generating all the things you need it to do. But just to have a blanket bit of advice that says, stop spending on marketing, absolutely shocking. Terrible advice. Really, really bad advice.
I also personally think, I'd be keen to your thoughts on this. When people say marketing, I think people think of a budget straight away, and like you say, people who are, it could be documentation, it could be PDFs, it could be other sort of stuff. I would say the biggest thing that's helped my business over the last 7 years is marketing, but without spending a penny on it, with social media. If you think of what, in terms of giving me a voice, the company a voice, my staff a voice, giving them freedom, giving them autonomy, not giving them scripts. I think if I look at some of our competitors and I see them on videos, no disrespect, this is not us in our culture. They're very scripted. And I think what's given us a voice is using social media to market who we are in the business and being transparent. So when you're recommending ways in which companies can try and generate new business and generate clients, is that a part of it, will you say, in terms of that education piece on the free marketing side of it?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I start with a couple of questions, which is, what is it your business does, and who do you do it for, and what makes you different to everybody else out there, right? Now, that last question, what makes you different to everyone else, is usually the point I pull what little hair I've got out, because people give you the same answer all the time. Right? Oh, we're different, and we use this technology, and you mean you use the same platform everyone else uses in your industry? Oh no, but we use it differently. But when you start to nail down, you start to drill into it and really push them and find out, it's like, look, actually, there's maybe like the way you do your payment plan is different to everybody else, and you do this, and you say, all right, let's bolt that together and we'll find a position for it. So you're kind of looking at, in marketing terms, is segmentation, targeting, and positioning. Who's in the market for it? Which ones of those people do you want to buy? Which ones are you going to go after? And what is it you can say that will really appeal to those people? And once you've got that, everything else is on the cards. And this is why I get a little bit annoyed here with digital marketers, because they've already said, by putting the word digital in there, they've already decided what the output's going to be before they even know the answer to those questions. So how do you know that? How do you know digital is going to be the answer? Because you don't even know we're targeting yet. But once you get to that point, you understand it. There's lots of different and free ways of doing it. I can see on the video, you're sat in front of a really strong mark. You've got the company name behind you. The company name's across LinkedIn when we've been talking in advance. So that kind of bit of branding is strong and carries across everything you do. The company ethos starts to come through. Why do you do it differently? We're great people to work with. How do you know that? Well, I see you on social media. I listen to your podcast. I see the things you do. I see the content you put out there. That all starts to build that position. Now, it's not going to do everything for you, but it can help to communicate the why you're different bit. That can be really, really useful there in social media for that. I completely agree, because I think it's something people miss when looking at. And I think one thing that and we're still going through the journey very much in marketing, what works and what doesn't.
And I think that's what I'm learning now. We've got to understand what works and what doesn't. Because before, I saw marketing as almost like, it's a dirty word in marketing, like an awareness tool. You know, we market something as awareness, but actually now all I'm bothered about is stuff which moves the needle. And we started, we used a company which were very good. They were absolutely fine. They did exactly what we wanted to do. But none of the stuff we put out actually made a real difference to our clients. You know, we were putting out things like interview tips and this and that type of stuff, which looked pretty. But the only thing which actually made a difference was when we used our CRM to gather data about salary survey of the salary difference between this year versus last year. And boom, the amount of in-man leads we got from that, because it was actually something people could go, that helps me because we are hiring for X, Y, and Z. Do you know what I mean? So I think that really, I went, we don't need to think about quantity now, it's quality and actually what's going to help someone and what's going to actually go, right, that helps us, I want to use Theo James. So that's the journey we're on. I imagine that's the same for any of your clients.
And I think I would say as well that in the smaller businesses, and I probably should define smaller, but certainly when there's less than 10 of you in the business, right? Generally speaking, the best place for social media content in a business of that size to be created is by the people who work in it.
Yeah.
I can think of lots of examples and lots of exemptions to that rule, right? Straight off the top of my head. But generally speaking, in a business of that size, people have a lot of ownership, a lot of autonomy, a lot of passion about what they do. And, you know, everyone's really invested in the success of the business and everyone knows everyone, you know, when everyone's birthday is, you know, how everyone feels what the company should be because you have to do when you're that size. You can't bring an agency in, you can't bring a freelancer in, pay them for 2 hours a week or 10 hours a week and expect them to care as much as you do, to get it as much as you do, to feel it as much as you do. It's not fair on them. And you'd be better off keeping that money and using it for something else. Yeah. Now, there's freelancers all over the Northeast and all over England throwing stuff going, stop telling them that, Andy, stop telling them that. But the fact is, right, you've only got a limited budget in small businesses and you've got to prioritize by impact. What's going to have the biggest impact? And if you can put that money away and get a better location in a trade show, or if you can keep that money and maybe spend it on some ads instead of on the freelancer, you might be better doing that by looking at what moves the needle, as you said. Yeah. But the only thing I would say about moving the needle is, one, make sure you're measuring, and two, marketers talk about the funnel concept. And I don't like trying to blind people with science, right? But if you think of a funnel coming down to a point, right at the bottom, you've got what you call conversion activity. That's people who are ready to buy and you make them buy with you instead of with someone else. Yeah. Right? Just don't focus all your marketing there. Not every marketing thing you do should pay off immediately, right? Some of it has to be what they call top of the funnel, which means in B2B, the research shows that about 95% of people who could buy your product aren't interested at any given time. They're just not in the market for you yet, right? Yeah. They don't need your services this week. They might need it next week. They might need it next month. They might need it next year. But at the minute, they don't need Theo James just yet. Right? Why? There's no jobs available. They don't need to recruit anyone. Perfect. So if all you're doing is conversion activity, which is the people who are ready to buy now and need your services now, you're not warming up the people for when they do need you in 6 months' time.
Yes.
And that's when measuring marketing can get quite difficult, because you're then going, right, well, did they come through because we did that podcast 6 months ago? Or is it something else? And best thing you've said so far, Mark, and best thing, I sound a bit rude there, but the fact you've got a CRM system, right? Yeah. That's the trick. They're not a huge amount of money these days. And if you've got a limited budget, make sure you've got a CRM system. Make sure you're tracking your activity, tracking your email campaigns, tracking everything that goes out, and then you'll get a feel for it.
Because you're right, that's the hardest thing. Actually, tracking return on investment, I find the hardest thing. Because exactly that, a lot of it's compound, isn't it? So all the little things you do build up. That's the hardest thing for us, going, okay, why have we got that job? Why is that client coming to us? Unless they can tell us, and sometimes they don't know. We've seen you online. You know, that's the nice one, but it's not always the case. It's the little things. So is there a difference in terms of, you know, if it's a business to business or it's a business consumer in manufacturing, would you say? What's the different techniques that you would use to try and market it, the different sort of strategies there, would you say?
Yeah. So I think generally speaking, right, if we're putting a broad demarcation in there, a lot of consumer products, you can go through that funnel process of, I've never heard of this product to I'm buying it. You can move through that quite quickly.
Yeah.
And that's why you hear a lot of marketers say, oh, the funnel doesn't exist anymore. It's nonsense. It does exist, right? It's just the time frame has changed. If you remember, if you're of a certain vintage, you'll remember, like I do, that shops didn't used to be open on a Sunday, half day Wednesday trading as well and stuff like that, right? So if you think of, you're sat watching TV, 1986, and you see an advert on the telly that night, and you're like, I want one of those, whether it's the latest Scale Electrics or whatever it is, right? But all the shops are shut because it's Sunday. So you're interested in it, but all the shops are shut. You can't go Sunday, so there's no point because there's no buses either, right? And you're at school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, half day close. All right, okay. So you've got to kind of hope by next Saturday, you get the bus into town, into Bradford. You go and see how much it costs. It's 3 times the amount of money that you've got. So you've got to save up, and then you got to. That was kind of traditional buying cycle, right? It took forever because all the shops were shut, right? Now you pick up your phone, you're scrolling through Instagram, you go, oh, I need a bike clip, which is something I bought the other week, right? I've got a small shed and a big bike because I'm quite tall.
Apple Pay,
Yeah, you're like, oh, there's a clip here. You're fixing it on up there. Never seen the company. Watched the video. Clicked. That was a price I'm interested in paying. Click, buy, done.
See you tomorrow.
About 2 minutes from seeing it through to buying it. It's the same process, but the time window shrunk, right? So that's a long way to come back to your question. But generally speaking, in consumer world, you want to make it as easy as you can to get people to give you money as quickly as you can. So the tactics you can use a lot of digital advertising. You can use a lot of sort of digital tools and techniques that take people from, you're interested in this, give us your details, give us your money, and move through that really quickly. Not every manufacturing company is big ticket or selling machines that are, 300,000-400,000 or 500,000. Some do manufacture small things, but they often sell them, like I said, in big units. There's no point trying to get them to click to buy, because unless they're a repeat business, and then you've probably got bespoke pricing, so you need it to talk to your CRM system anyway. You're really just trying to do the awareness, the lead generation stuff. Here's the reasons why we're good. Here's the reasons we're better than other people. And you're trying to tell the story of why you're good people to work with. And that's often around, we don't let people down, testimonial driven, case study driven. That type of thing can be much, much bigger in manufacturing world than it can be, say, in consumer world.
Yeah, and it resonates massively, because if I think of 2 companies, I had Ogle on the founder of Ogle, the chap was on Dragon's Den. He was on the podcast last week.
I was listening to that. He's fantastic, isn't he?
Amazing products. And exactly that. That's an example of, literally what great product to market. It's a recycled plastic pod. All you've got to do there and see someone in a garden working a really pretty practical pod, and you think, right, you can see yourself in there. That's me. How much is it? I can afford it. I can't afford it. I can. Great, I'll buy it. Versus another company we work with who manufacture protection for firefighters. That's a very different type of marketing, because obviously that's not consumer led, but they're still the way they market their company is tremendous. They have videos which basically highlight the health and safety side of it and the importance of what they do, and both obviously extremely important and powerful, but very, very different messages and ways of doing it, I guess.
Absolutely. I think the one thing that I would say, and B2B marketing can learn a lot from business to consumer and vice versa. Right? And the one thing, if you were forcing me to pick one thing to say that business to business can learn from business to consumer, it's the power of brand. And I go back to the fact that you're sat in front of a brilliant Theo James backdrop, right? But people go, brand doesn't matter in business to business. And you're like, okay, you go to business events, right? And you just know the car park is going to be full of BMWs and Audis. Why? Yeah. Oh, listen, Andy, no one cares about branding B2B. Are you sure? Where did you all get your suits from? Always the same shop. All right, okay. Let's have a look at your phone that you're all using Apple. Why do you use Apple? Oh, they're just the best about. All right, that's interesting. Yeah. And no one buys brands in B2B, right? There's a psychological reason people buy brands. It's a shortcut. Can I trust it? What does it stand for? When I see that thing, what does it flick up in my head?
Yeah.
And so many B2B organizations just ignore it because they think it's a consumer thing. Yeah. And then when you'll go to a trade show and you'll see a bunch of guys who are all decked out in and the company you can see they've spent a little bit more on nice shirts or nice T-shirts, and they're all in the same one. No one's wearing last year's T-shirt with a different logo on. Yeah. They've got the same jackets on, branded water bottles. And so I'm not just talking about branding, but when you talk to the people, they talk in a relatable way, but when you read the website, it's written in the same way. So all the brand carries through everything they do. You talk to the sales directors on the stand, as well as the marketing assistant, and you talk to them and you get the same messages. And you're like, oh, wow. right? And that brand carries through everything in the organization. And when you get that right, you can see it makes a huge difference in B2B, huge difference. And not only that, it allows you to charge a premium as well.
Yeah.
Because people were like, we trust them. Why do you trust them? Oh, because it's an intangible, but it allows you to charge a premium when you build a brand.
Yeah.
Right. And it's ignored by B2B because they're often who runs B2B companies? It's either the finance director, the production director, or the sales director. And none of those three people typically give a hoot about branding. So it's just bottom of the pile.
Yeah, exactly that. And based on that, what are your thoughts on websites? Because I see a huge difference in manufacturing from websites which are obviously very budget and have done 20 years ago, whatever, versus ones which are brilliant. And do you think that makes a difference?
Oh, we don't invest in our website, Andy, because our sales team do everything we need them to do. It's like, yeah, but what about the people who never got to your sales team because they went to your website from 2002? It's like,
that's crap. Yeah,
I'm not saying you have to spend 50,000, 500,000, $1 million on your website, right? You don't need to do that.
Yeah,
but it will be the place people go to check before they even lift the phone. Right? You might not do it, but they do. Right? The user behavior tells you people do. So just invest some money in it. But the cheapest way you can do it is read the content. I work with a manufacturer at the minute, and I'm not going to mention the name, but if they're listening, they'll know exactly who I'm talking about because I tell them this all the time, and we're working through it. Right? I sit in their office when I go in, and I hear their customers ring up, and there's a brilliant personal service. So, you'll ring up and go, oh, Mark, how you doing? Yeah, great. It's the you wanted the X widget, didn't you? Yeah, you bought some 6 months ago. Now, sometimes it's the salespeople remember that, and other times they've got their CRM up. Yeah. And but they're making it sound like a perfectly natural conversation, right? Yep. And the customer's getting this personal service. And you go like, this is what you need to bottle in this company, right? You go to trade shows, it's there. You go to everything, it's there, right? If I gave you one of their brochures, it feels like it was written by Prince Charles. Brochure's website is like, hello and welcome to this company. We have been in business since 1974. And you're like, is this the same company? There's these people here. Like, yeah, it's our brochure. And you're like, throw it in the bin.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. And it's the same with website content. Go through your website content. And if it's not the way the people are answering the phone in the office, burn it to the ground and rewrite it. Because that's your brand, right? The way, the experience that person is getting when they talk to you, when they meet you at a trade show, when they watch you on a podcast. If that's not on your website, it just feels like it's incongruous. It's like, well, who is this company? Who are they? What's going on? So what you write has to be the same as not how you speak is in bad grammar, but it has to capture that feeling of what you're doing. And it's the easiest thing to do. It costs no money to do.
Yeah.
But go back through and have a look at your website, have a look at your printed material, right? And just look at it and go, right, does it sound like when someone answers the phone?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, get shot of it and start again.
It's interesting that because we've just had a brand new website and it was quite expensive. I mean, I'm from Yorkshire, everything's expensive.
Is it more than 50 pence?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was and it was painful. It was painful getting done. No doubt about it. Anyone says that getting a new website isn't painful well, it was me previously before getting a website. It is painful. But when we went for the exercise, I remember thinking, do we need this? A full workshop with all my staff in terms of what our voice is? And it was, I remember thinking, oh, this is a bit of an overkill. They're just getting money at me. But actually, after we went for the process and now after the end result is they got us and they got our voice. And exactly what you just said there is the consistency of who my staff are versus the website, and it's identical. And I think without that, if it'd just been probably me saying what I wanted, I don't think I would have got that outcome. So I completely resonate with that.
The other investment is photography, right? So, yes. The number of companies I talk to and like, what makes you different? Our people make us different. And you're like, just bring your website up for 1 second and show you every single person on your website is a stock photography.
Yeah.
Yeah. So which of your people are these here? Oh, I didn't want to pay for photography. And did you know how much that costs? And you're like, right. And also, just while we're talking about your people, all I see on your website is your product. Oh, we don't want to put our people on the website. What if those recruiters are looking, right? Because once they know who works here, and like, lads, let me tell you something. Have you heard of LinkedIn? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just type your company name into LinkedIn. Brings up everybody who works.
If they want to go, they go. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's look on the bright side. Let's put your people on the website with an actual photograph of them so people know who they're dealing with. If people are your differentiating factor, you got to make the most and put them front and center, right? So that's a bit of photography. Yes, it costs money. Tone of voice workshop. A top tip, right? If you have a slightly bigger team and you want to kind of nail your tone of voice, and it can be really difficult to do, right? Because you can come up with these general statements where we're fun and friendly, but we're into the detail, and you're like, brilliant, and you give that to someone else, and it means it's like, what does that mean? Yeah, so nobody really knows, right? But a really simple way of doing it is pick a celebrity spokesperson.
Yep.
Right. So you don't have to be that. You're not actually going to pay Stephen Fry to come and represent your business, or Dame Judi Dench or whatever. Right. But have a little workshop, a little brainstorm with some people in your team, junior people, senior people. Get 4 or 5 people in a team. Go, right. Who in the public eye really capture, who speaks to people in the way that we like to speak to people? Mm-hmm. And, you know, so you'll kick some names around, and often you get kind of sports captains, or, you know, like, oh, the way Harry Kane leads the England team, or, you know, the way Stephen Fry hosts QI or something like that, right? Get somebody that's relatively well known like that.
Yeah.
And then just nail a location for it. So you might be like, is it a pub conversation? Is it a lecture at a university? Is it or whatever, right? Put those 2 things together. And if you say to someone, try and write the copy for the website in the way Stephen Fry hosts QI, or in the way that Harry Kane will give a speech to the England team before they went out to play. It's just a bit richer in how it captures that moment and that emotion. So celebrity spokesperson and the kind of the location for it can be a really easy way of getting a wider buy-in for people who, if you've got, and in some places, right, you are going to have 7 or 8 different people writing different sections of the website and different sections of the brochure. So to try and at least get it all on a similar page, that's a really good tip to try and keep it together.
I like that, and I wish I'd known that beforehand, because the one mistake I made was spending money on a ghostwriter. No, this would probably tell a lie. That was probably not working with the ghostwriter enough, because I didn't know before it's built. It's difficult as well, because you're just going off these things you can't really. It's not visual yet. You can't see.
Yeah.
And when it came back into the website, I looked and thought, that's really fluffy, and it's not us. You know, we're not that. You know, we're quite black and white. We're very honest, we're very transparent. So I literally reworded virtually all of it in terms of what we're about, what our culture is, and our voice. Mm-hmm. But I thought I couldn't do the service to ghostwriter, because how the hell is he going to write with what I gave him? Do you know what I mean? It's impossible. So
you've been doing this. You look at least 24, 25 years old, right? So you've got 20. You've got a few years service at this anyway, and you know it's your business. You live it and breathe it, and it comes through, right? And you can't have someone come and spend an hour with you over coffee and then expect to nail that tone of voice. I'm not criticizing your ghostwriter, but I think you said that the exercise the web development company went through, where they forced you into a workshop that you were thinking, what's the point? That's a good way to start capturing that immersion session of, you know, give them a chance to get to know you, because that often takes money, right? But you know, it's a shortcut way to do it.
I agree, but I think the website is so important, and I unfortunately, manufacturing, I see a lot of websites which haven't been given the time it needs. There's a company in Northeast called Prima Cheese, and when I was looking at different websites to get in, you know, tips and advice, and okay, I like this, like that. They're quite a small company, but they're a brilliant website, and I love the fact that all their people are on it, all updated, really good, high definition pictures. It went from black and white to color. I remember thinking, that's great. You just see them as who they are. And I really like that. So I think, I completely agree. The website's massive. So just as a step-by-step, let's take because what I want to do for anyone's listening who maybe is a senior person, whoever, with a manufacturing firm, and they're thinking, we don't do anything on marketing, really. You know, we do very little. You know, we're reactive to things. Let's say they're a rubber band manufacturer, like, for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
What's the first steps in terms of, you know, they've got a budget for it. They've got a small budget. Potentially, this is a plan they've got to put together. What are the first steps, you think, to start the journey of, if you like, of manufacturing?
Yeah. So the big thing I would say is you've got to start with that question of who do we want to buy this product, and why are they going to buy it from us, right?
Yeah.
And what are our different? So we make rubber bands. What does that market look like? So we've got the big suppliers of rubber bands who produce the magazines that go into all the schools. So they're going in there. And we know that all the NHS contracts are tendered for, so they're tied up over there. And we've got all the military contracts and stuff, they're all tied up over there as well. And we'd have to bid for that, and they're on a 3-year cycle. So you might be looking at this whole market and going, wow, this market's huge for rubber bands. But actually, when you get into it, you go, well, there's like 8/10 of the market there that's already tied up and we can't get into it. So who's in the 2/10 of the market? And you go, well, serviced office providers. They're expanding. There's newer there, and you might know this because you've got market research, or you've probably been in the rubber band industry for a long time. It's not a lot of manufacturing. One of the good things, you don't often get new entrants who know nothing about the market, right? People tend to know the industry. So look, we can see this is fast growing. It's slightly lower prices than you get in the public sector, but it's not being chased by all the other guys because they've all got the big public sector contracts. So we could clean up this area, right? Yeah. So straight away, you've changed your view of the world from talking to teachers, talking to purchasing managers in the NHS, and talking to purchasing managers in the military, to talking to people who run serviced offices. Now, you don't need to know anything about the rubber band industry to go, this might need a different sort of language, right? We're not talking public sector, we're talking private sector. We're talking people who work with a lot of startups, a lot of tech companies, a lot of small businesses, right? How do we, okay. So now we've got who we want to sell to. And can we talk to some of these people? Like, go and talk. What problems do you have? Why do you buy rubber bands? I end up having to run to Tesco to buy rubber bands. People keep coming and asking me for rubber bands. I have to run to Tesco all the bloody time to buy them because we keep running out. It costs a fortune when you buy them from there as well. You've got a pain point for the customer, right? So once you know which part of the market you're going after and what problem you can solve for them, once you've got that, that's the starting point. You know the old phrase about if you got 8 hours to chop down a tree, you'd spend 6 sharpening your axe, right? It's nonsense. He never said, was it Lincoln? Never said that, right? If it takes you 8 hours to chop down a tree, you're using the wrong side of the axe. That's the thing you need to take from that. But sharpen your axe is an absolutely important thing in marketing. Work that out. Who are you selling to? Why are they going to buy from you? And what messaging can you give them to tell them you understand their pain and you can take it away? Yeah. Once you've got that, you've got yourselves the foundations of a marketing plan, because that tells you that. Now, bring in your industry experience. What are the key times throughout the year for selling rubber bands? Well, March, because everyone's budget runs out in March and they've gone buy a load of stationery because they know they can get the PO in and then it'll arrive. Yep. Okay, so that's a good time. Back to school in September. Another big time, because back to school, people come back and they pinch all the rubber bands and take them home for the kids. Perfect. So we've got 2 peak times of activity now. So we know who we're targeting, what we're going to do, what our peak times of activity are, and let's set some objectives, right? Proper objectives with pound signs and numbers next to them, not just raise awareness. Man, how many things are we going to sell? What's the pound signs in there? Because I can't take awareness to the bank to pay the staff wages. Yeah. Once you got that, that's kind of the really difficult, dirty bit done. Yep. But the next bit becomes really easy now, because now you have a target market and you know where they are. So, do you want to go on Facebook? Do you want to go on Instagram? Do you want to go on LinkedIn? Well, maybe, but actually, can we go to the Institute of Directors and say, can you give us a list of all the serviced offices in the UK? And they've got a library team down at the IOD, and within a day and a half, they'll send you a list of all the serviced offices in the UK with a postal address and an email address and a contact name as well. And you're like, I think I've got a plan now, right? So start by, we've got this information, so let's have a brochure or a flyer or whatever. We'll send that to them. Do we follow up with an email? Can we get people on the phones to try and make appointments? So if you start with the marketing has to be digital thing, or marketing has to be about social media or promotions, start with the basics. Who you're targeting, why they're going to buy from you, set some objectives, and when do you need to be busy? And then after that, everything else starts to become really, really simple. So I can't say use Instagram more than Facebook or use LinkedIn more than Twitter, because it depends on who you're targeting. And I can't say don't do ads or don't do newspaper ads or don't do trade ads, because I don't know who you're targeting. But if you answer those questions at the beginning, those next bits really become really, really easy. Often your promotion part of marketing becomes really easy once you've done that spade work at the beginning.
Love that, mate. And fair play, because that was... that wasn't planned. So
I have worked with a ball bearing manufacturer before. So while it's not, it's one of those where it's like you walk in, you're like, oh, ball bearing manufacturer.
Let's make those sexy. I'm
going to earn my money this way.
But, exactly. Well, that's it though, isn't it? Because I think, a lot of manufactured products aren't obviously, aren't you look and go, I want one of those. So I love the fact that you're understanding initially what the pain points are and where the potential entries to market is there. And actually what you demonstrate there is how a marketing team and a sales team work together, because off the back of that information, boom, the sales team, they've got so much information to go after.
Absolutely. Look, in a good manufacturing organization, half of marketing's job has got to be to make the sales team's life easier. That doesn't mean you're the sales team's administration, right? And you're filling out their order forms because they can't be bothered doing it, or you're booking them hotels for trade shows, right? Like, let them do that themselves, or get them a sales administrator to do that, right? Yeah. But your job in marketing should be to make, you should be celebrating together that you gave them 10 leads and they converted 8 of them. It's not their conversion, it's the team, we're helping you. And if you come, and you should be tracking that conversion rate. Yeah. So if every month you're giving them 10 leads and 2 convert, right? And you might go, oh, that's terrible. But if it's a standard, you give them 10 leads and 2 convert, right? If it goes down to 1, you need a steward's inquiry about that. If it goes up to 5, you need a steward's inquiry about it. Yeah. So keep tracking that information. It might be weekly, monthly, quarterly. It depends on the organization and the sales cycle. But that feedback, your sales team should be coming back to you and going, look, they're just not ready to buy. You're sending us too many of these that they're interested, but it's too early, or you're sending us too late and they've already signed a head of terms with somebody else. That feedback should be coming both ways. So you can go, right, how do we get them earlier, or how do we get them later, or how do we keep them warm for a bit longer before we give them to the sales team? Yeah. Got to be your job to, and then you all celebrate together. Now that's utopia, right? I can think of one place I've worked in 10 years where that happens and everyone loves it and gets on together. Yeah. But that's the direction of travel you should be going in. Yeah, excellent. And like you say, analysing how qualified those leads are. Yeah. Absolutely. It's life's tough sometimes in business. We're coming into a recession at the minute and things are going to get a damn sight harder for lots of people. But you've got to remember, for most organizations, there are people out there that want the thing you're making. Yeah. And they might not want it at the price you're trying to sell it at, because your prices have gone up, because your gas bill's gone up and your electric bill's gone up. Yeah. But they need your product, right? Mm-hmm. There are people out there, sexy or unsexy, ball bearings or rubber bands, trainers or microwaves. It doesn't really matter. And that's why I think, to go back to what I said earlier about production demanding what happens, that's why I think it's a bad way to do it, because then you start making products nobody wants. Yep. It ties up capital because you're making them. It ties up time, ties up a lot of emotional energy because stuff's not selling, and then everyone's getting kicked to sell it. And you end up focusing on the thing that's not selling instead of the stuff that is selling. Yeah. And that's the quickest way for everyone to go out of business, right? So focus on what's selling, not on what's not. And that's why that sort of production-led product development doesn't work. I can think of Post-it notes are probably the only product I can think of off the top of my head that somebody invented by accident. Yeah. 3M were like, oh, we've got this thing. And it took them about 10 years after that to go, oh, this is what it could be used for.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was kind of a complete happy accident, but it worked. I think tea bags might be another one. But they're kind of 2 products in the history of all of products.
It's still day-to-day use now, yeah.
But mostly, if you just generate stuff and you've not talked to people about it, it just tends to die a quiet death, right? But if you can keep sales and marketing working together and talk to your customers constantly, get that feedback through. It might be a sales team or customer service or customer success or whatever you call it, or contact centers. Keep that information flowing back to the marketing team, back to the sales team, so you can react quickly. Yeah. Because as things get tighter, if you're losing job after job after job because the price is going up and up and up and up, that might be a conversation that you have to have. I'm not saying that you have to slash your prices and be the cheapest in the market, but if there's that intelligence that tells you our prices have gone up 30% because all our costs have gone up 30%, that's great. But we're losing every pitch we go for because we're too expensive. At some point, you've got to go, well, we are, okay, maybe we do have to take a little bit of on the margin there, but why can't, there's a different question, not for marketing. How come they can turn out those widgets at 10 pence and we're doing them at 14 pence? Yep. Why can't we match that? That's a question for production to go and look at. Yeah. But that only works if everybody's talking. And if you're sitting in silos, not talking to each other, it's a waste of everybody's time.
Communication. Yeah, love that. Excellent. Look, I think we've got some amazing things there for people to really put to practice straight away. I mean, is there anything else, Andy, you think the manufacturing firm should be thinking about that we haven't discussed at all, you think?
I'm wary that I just want to give a plug for what I do as a business, right? But it's an interest. There's a reason why I do it, and I think it's an interesting thing. So creativity in business is a weird thing, right? People think creativity is just what designers do or web developers do, right? But I think creativity in boardrooms is really important, and especially really important when you go into what's going to be a difficult time, into a recession, right? And one of the things we look at in 𝐼𝐚𝐻𝐼𝐼 is taking manufacturers who are making products and selling them B2B and help them sell it direct to consumer. Why do we do this? Well, if you think of, say, office chairs, right? Every office chair manufacturer in the world wants to get 2,000 units into grade A office space somewhere in the middle of Newcastle. That's what they want. They've got one sales guy working on it. He gets that. It's £500,000 worth of business. Fantastic. But those are £500 office chairs that they sell for 150 quid to get the sale on 2,000 of them.
Yep.
You sell them one at a time to people who are now working from home more often, you'll get 500 quid for it. Now, that sounds like an interesting margin. You're like, oh, come and tell me more about this, Andy. But that takes creativity in the boardroom. Why does it take creativity? Well, your whole manufacturing process is built around creating 2,000 chairs for that one order that came in.
Yeah.
Your whole distribution process is built around putting all those chairs in one container, sending them to that office in Newcastle and getting an engineer there to build all the chairs for them. Now you want to send one to someone who's ordered it in Barking.
Yeah.
And they've got to put it together themselves. So there's sometimes just having a better margin is not always the right reason to do it. How often are people going to buy your product? So what's the repeat cycle? If it's only once every 30 years, these office chairs are fantastic. It'll last you 15 years. I know, but, but if you've got a product that people buy on a more regular, more frequent cycle, it might be worth taking a hit on that to do it. Do they have to put it together themselves? Is it easy to ship? There's lots of questions you need to go through to work out if this is for you, but that's one of the things we kind of help people through it. But creativity in the boardroom to look and go, right, well, to go back to that example where you're losing everything on margin. Oh, well, everyone else is doing it cheaper than us. How do we do it cheaper? That is one way of answering that question. But the other way to ask that is, how can we find people who are willing to pay more for our product?
Yeah. Because
there's a terrible post floats around on LinkedIn, but it's absolutely true, right? If you go and buy, say, a bottle of water, you can buy a bottle of water at a festival and it costs you £5, or you can go and buy it in Tesco and it costs you 10 pence or 15 pence. It's the same bottle of water. So where you sell things and who you sell it to and what else they can buy at that same time has a huge impact on it. So that creativity in the boardroom, saying, well, if we're losing all these on margin, why don't we sell somewhere else where we can get better margin for it? Or are we investing in our brand enough to get that? And that creativity in the boardroom is what we hopefully help companies do and look at and say, can we help you get a better margin for your product, build better data relationships with your customers so you can sell them more frequent things. It's not about getting rid of your B2B business. That stays. Yeah. It's about opening a new angle to that. But you've got to be aware that it can be quite difficult. It's not just a case of you say, yeah, we'll sell these chairs, and then the next day the margin's rolling in. It's like a 12-month process sometimes to get from this is a good idea to the first revenue rolling. But that creativity in the boardroom, I think, is really important. Don't just look at the problem as how do we cut prices. It's how do we get people who are going to pay the price we want to sell our product for. Yeah. That's the question to ask.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And actually, I think the pandemic's a key example as well of companies that did that really, really well, because they had a massive problem which was never, ever, could ever be even envisaged to ever be a problem. It suddenly was, threatened to shut them down in some situations, and they were forced to pivot and actually showed how agile they were. There's a company called PFF Packaging, and who did extremely well, to my knowledge, during the pandemic, because they suddenly went, actually, look at the factory. What can we do? Right, okay, we can actually produce things that are going to help in this pandemic. We can produce face masks. I can think of other companies, INEOS, hand sanitizer, loads of stuff, which they never would have thought they would get into that market. They're really well out of it.
I mean, there's a hand sanitizer company. Now, I don't work with them. I had a chat with them. They were already sort of downstream of this process. While I was developing the concept, I had a chat with them. And they did the same. They used to make industrial hand sanitizer and sell it to hospitals, basically. Hospitals around the country. They had a contract with the NHS. The pandemic hit, and they were like, "We've got hand sanitizer by the millions of gallons."
Yeah.
And lots of people and like sales teams sat around and go, "We're not allowed to leave the house anymore." And I go, "Right, shall we get them on the phones to see if we can get it listed in supermarkets to see?" Why not, right? So they had this, it wasn't the biggest pivot in the world. Now they learned, it was an interesting and enlightening conversation for me. And I thank the guy for his time, because it was the lessons they learned along that journey. Because as a B2B organization, your view is this way. You're looking one way, you've got your blinkers on because that's what you need. You need focus in your business. And then you suddenly try and open a consumer arm to the business. And he's like, what is this world? What is going on over here, right? Yeah. And that's where, like, someone described me once as a translator. It's like you kind of translate the B2C world to the B2B people. And I was like, yeah, that's not a bad definition, because it is a little bit different. And things happen strangely in B2C world for reasons no one quite understands. But there's opportunity there for companies that are looking for it. And I think that creativity element is essential.
And you're right, because the traditional boardroom doesn't have people in it from that world. I think sometimes you don't know what's right in front of you. You could just a slight bit of creativity and boom, like you say, you can suddenly charge more, you can make more, whatever you want to do. It's gonna affect your bottom line in a positive manner. So no.
And the thing I look for, people say, what's your ideal client? And I can quote you like a turnover figure, and I can quote you a company size and stuff like this. But the number one thing I look for when a company gets in touch, say, can we have a chat about this? I look at the board of directors, and if they've got independent NEDs on that board, my eyes light up. I'm interested. If it's a family-run firm,
always on its way. Yeah.
And that's not to criticize family-run firm, but you tend to find independent's job is to rattle the cage and to spot things that the family don't spot, or that the typical board don't
challenge
spot.
them a little bit.
Yeah, that could be financial stuff, and it often is financial stuff. Like, we're going to have a cash flow problem if we don't do X, Y, whatever. Yeah. But it's to challenge them, it's to push, it's to see, look, what else is beyond that hill? Instead of just running up the same hill all the time, what's over the other hill? What if we went over that hill and down the other side? Yeah. So whenever I see someone gets in touch, say, do you want to have a chat? And I see independent non-executive director on the board, I'm like, yeah, I'd love to chat. I'll walk over to see you. I don't mind. It's fine.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the creativity bit.
Perfect. No, amazing. And where can people find you, Andy? What's the best way to get in touch?
So LinkedIn, it's Andy with an I, not a Y. For reasons
I'll link you in, obviously. Yeah.
So Andi Jarvis on LinkedIn and Twitter are probably the two places you'll find me most. And the company's 𝐿𝐴 Marketing, EXIMO. So if you search for Andi Jarvis with an I on Google, you'll find 𝐿𝐴 Marketing. You'll find me on LinkedIn. It's all over the place. So
yeah, and like you say, I hope that is the case, because we are going into a difficult time for most businesses, and I think, I'm sure you agree, this is the time now to start doing things differently. I think sometimes you got to spec it to accumulate and get your ducks in a row, and that massively involves marketing, because you bang on the companies that are doing the best, the ones that are taking it really seriously and not seeing it as an add-on to the business, they're seeing it as a massive part of the business.
Yeah, central to what they do. Absolutely.
Look, Andy, thank you so much, mate. This has been great. I really appreciate it.
No worries, Matt. Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.